Hello racers! Let's talk about PQ season and the PQs we've attended recently. So I was in the London PQ and yesterday we were at the Warsaw PQ together, and because our showings were actually really decent, we decided to create a video on what deck we took, how the tournament went, and what is next for us in this season. So let's start with my London PQ. I will try to keep it brief because I've took Han Red, so I've decided to switch decks.
Yep, and Han Red is in general very interesting in this current meta because by far the most popular variant competitively is Han Yellow. So you get access to cannings, bouncers, and stuff like that. But it's more or less with Han similar to Boba as it was in set 1 and set 2, where you could play that leader with other color combinations, and the decks were still very viable. So stuff like Green Boba was by far the most popular, but Boba Yellow and Boba Red were also quite viable variants, and also Boba Blue. So it's similar concept with Han Red, and also each variant just gives you something. So yeah.
Yeah, and the thing that for me Han Red gives you is consistency. I was a little bit tired of playing decks that rely on, for example, triple Dark Raid. So I wanted a deck that will every single game played the same, or at least I will have an option to always go to a baseline of playing really similar. And in Han Red, it's basically, let me show you the list. You can always play a really good 3-drop on turn 1, really good 4-drop on turn 2, and follow up it with really powerful 5-drop or a trick plus a 3-drop on turn 3. And because of this, your hand flip turn will always be really powerful. Because your opponent will either deal with your board from previous turns or will block your hand flip, and whichever they will do, you can always adjust your play and go face with your minions if they decided to kill your hand, or if they don't decide to kill your hand and will deal with the board to block damage, you can just play a really powerful 7-drop that can stabilize a board, and then you can be really aggressive in the next turns. So I've started to playing this deck quite a while. I've created a video about it, but this deck evolved a lot because of the meta. So, for example, I wasn't playing Plo Koons in the previous versions. In London, Plo Koon was in the sideboard and was the strongest card in the sideboard, in addition to Wing Scout. So 4/1, draw 2 cards when defeated. And those 2 cards were the key cards that allowed me to win Swiss rounds in London.
Yep, and yeah, in general, like I really love the addition of Starwing Scout because it's very good against Han Yellow basically, and it's by far the card that you want to play against Han Yellow. I don't know if there are more matchups where you want to side this card in, but Han Yellow is the matchup where he doesn't really have many good pink abilities, so basically none. And Starwing Scout is able to deal 4 damage each round that you can play on the very first round, and that's a lot of damage. Like most turn 1 plays only deal 2. And even if they open with Falcon, who should be a really good answer to space units, can't really do much about Starwing Scout because if he attacks him, he trades, so you go even. And also, if you have the initiative, you as a Han are gonna draw 2 cards, and if you played Han, you know that drawing cards is a very powerful thing in this deck because you can use the Han leader ability more and play those very expensive units faster.
Yeah, and because I always had a trouble winning the games when Han Yellow started with Millennium Falcon, so this fixes 2 of the big problems in the matchup. And actually in London I played quite a few Han Yellow matchups, and the first time my opponent saw the ship, like laughed a little bit because nobody plays it. But then I had initiative, I played it as turn 1, and his only turn 1 play was Millennium Falcon, and then he realized how screwed he is because he played Millennium, I took initiative. So his options were to trade, give me 2 cards, or go base, and I will trade as a first action. And it basically ended up with me taking a game because with 2 cards advantage, you can snowball this matchup so hard. And Plo Koon, for the same reason, as you can see, most of the sideboard in London was versus Han Yellow, because this deck began to be really, really explosive and started to winning out of PQs, so I decided to prepare for it. And it was a really good call. I've sadly lost in the final versus Boss Green, that I was not prepared at all for. I didn't train this matchup even once, and I just played it poorly. I didn't mulligan, even though my hands were good. Now, after training this matchup, I know what I would need to do to win. So basically, Millennium Falcon in this matchup is extremely powerful because Han Green can't really answer it, and they can't also play any upgrades on it because I would just take it back, and he would lose a card and damage on the first round. So this is how the deck was looking at the London PQ, but because the meta changed another time, I've had to make some adjustments. So the adjustments were basically there is not a single control deck in the meta that I'm really scared of, because Boss Blue is not really playable if you have 20 or 15% of Han players at the tournament, and Han Yellow basically has a free win versus any control deck that doesn't ramp. So I could take out Gorilla Attack Pods and Breaking Ins and put answers for the current meta in.
So I really love the additions that you made to this deck, especially the Plo Koon. Plo Koon is a very strong card against Han, especially at the start of the season. A lot of people were like, yeah, we have already Syndicate Lucky who does the same, but is more consistent. Also, it's not as easy to enable the coordinate in Han, especially because in a lot of coordinate cases, you want to have your leader on the field and then use the coordinates ability because it's way easier, because leader is essentially a free unit that you get. So it was kind of harder to do in Han Yellow, but people came around with this card and started playing it, and it performs really well.
Yeah, it's especially good in the cases that you play a 3-5 on turn 1, because 3-5 units are really hard to be removed from the board. And if you go 3-5 unit turn 1, 3-5 unit turn 2, your opponent will either trade, and then you don't really need Plo Koon because they lost their units, so you can safely go with Han, or if they didn't, you just went face, and then Plo Koon becomes incredibly powerful because a 5 mana 6/6 ambush can clear almost anything on 5 mana. And the other addition was L3. L3 was actually also the meta call because the deck struggled a little bit versus pings. So Jango, Cad, Quinlan, you had to play really carefully, and sometimes you just wanted to play a unit that will stick to the board. And L3 actually perfectly fills that spot because you can play it really early, so turn 1, turn 2. And you have a unit that have a shield, so it's really hard to get rid of. That's why basically Han Yellow plays 6 of them. But the Smuggle for 4 is the second part. Han Red, more often than not, want to play Blaster on Han Flip, and then you have 4 mana left on the Han Flip. So my only option was to play either a 4-drop from hand, and if I used Han ability every single turn, I didn't have any cards on Han Flip. And then the second was tech, but you not always want to play tech on 4 resources, on 7 resources then with hand flip, because if they kill it really early, tech is basically your end game security in this deck. So L3 became something that I played really, really often as a 4 mana smuggle, just to have a unit that can be buffed and boosted on the next turn. And in this deck, you have so many buffs, so many upgrades that L3 sometimes became like a 6/2 unit that can clear something with and still be alive because of the shield. So after the changes, the deck started to looking like this.
Yep, and I really like the changes that you made. Basically, adding the Plo Koon and L3 is a really good meta call in general. And yeah, that's it for me.
Yeah, and so because I've removed tanks and breaking ins, I've put 3 L3s and 2 Plo Koons in the main. But the other card I had to remove was one of the Spark of the Rebellion, because I've actually almost never used this card. I don't really like to gamble, so and playing Spark on turn 1, turn 2, or turn 3 is basically saying if you have 2 plays you can make, I'm really behind, even though I've discarded the better one, because you still play the 4-drop and I will only have 2 mana in like 4 resources. But you sometimes want to have it for securing hand flip. So 1 is actually a really okay place in the deck, because it can also be played if you have tech on board as a 4 mana security in the late game, just to like discard the last card of your opponent or something like this. And I've added another Fang fighter because Bosk is really, really like prevalent now. Best boss was green, and the third Plo Koon just for a security to have something that I can sideboard in versus other hands. And Sip decided to stick with his winning deck with Jango Tarpingtown. So, but I think you made quite few changes to the deck.
Yeah. So if you thought that playing something wild like Starwing Scout from set 1 was crazy, then as you can see on this list, there are quite a lot of cards that one might call a draft filler. So Criminal Muscle, Guavian Antagonizers, Reckless Gunslingers, those cards are not as popular, but they have quite a few good use cases. So actually, the Criminal Muscle and Criminal Muscle is the tag that that Beton told me, and I believe the guy who showed you the tag was in London, and it was one of the KTOD guys, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, exactly.
And and also he was playing also Django, and then also Bobby from KTOD was also playing Django, and he was running Reckless Gunslingers. But both of them I'm pretty sure, were running it instead of Deathstorm Stormtrooper. And I was like, what if you play all of them? So one of the good ways to counter Honey Yellow especially is by playing those 1-drops. So if you play 2 3/1s or 3/1 plus 2/1 on turn 1, Han doesn't really have that many great options. So if he plays a 3/5, he can trade, but then if he trades, you can use Tarkintown on the unit that attacked your unit, and then you have still another unit that can swing to the opponent's base and deal damage. And also there is the Criminal Muscle, who is answer to Crafty Smugglers and L3s, so you can play one of the other 1-drops and Criminal Muscle to bounce the shield, and that's a really good play on turn 1, because then they have a 2/2 minion that can only trade with your unit, and both of them are gonna die, and you're in similar case as with a 3/5. And then like one day before the tournament, we're on the call with Beton, and we're talking about this list. And I was joking that I am gonna attack Bentic 2 tubes to side to have even more one drops, but he came up with another solution. So
Yeah,
that is it.
I basically was looking at the list, and I've tested the list as well before we talked, and the list performed incredibly well. So going so aggressive was one of the factors that not many lists in the current meta can handle that much power on early turns. And because Jango can slow you down, and in the later stages of the game he can just pull out like 8 damage from hand from triple Dark Raid, it was really coming together. But you also had to make some cuts. So basically you cut heavy pursuer tanks and Boba, but you change it for cards that gave you better matchups into the meta. So for example, Arm to the Hip, if you have 5 or 6 units in the board, this card is 2 or 4 mana deal for damage, and your opponent needs to answer it. On the other hand, they will just get it enough next turn. And Patrol Fighter is also a card that if you have boards to sacrifice and basically 2/1 minions in something, you can just exploit it, and it can just benefit you with reducing mana of your later stages units. Now you can bounce their sentinels or their units that can trade into yours, and still put so much pressure. And for the Guavian Antagonizer, I just said, if you are playing Criminal Muscle to handle L3s, then you can just Antagonizer it, like put Antagonizer instead of Bentic, because he is basically a free trade up into any 2/2 shielded. And even if they kill it, they've used so many resources on it that the card doesn't really matter. But I also think it's not in the main, because your rest of the sideboard is for basically Bosk green, and Antagonizer is not really best into those matchups.
Yep. So I really decided to play the Fangs and Confiscate because as Beton mentioned earlier, the Bosk Green became a really popular deck in the last 2 weeks. Mostly last week, because last week actually it won like 2 PQs and top 8'd some more.
Yeah.
So it performed really well. So I was expecting to see it even more at the Warsaw PQ. So I was like, okay, I probably gonna need the upgrade removal for the Boss Green, because against Boss Blue, bounties are annoying for sure, especially the Death Mark. Top target is manageable, more or less, just by dealing a lot of damage. But against Boss Green, both Parais on your head as well as Bounty Hunter's Quarry are very very deadly bounties, because they provide a lot of value. So getting rid of them was very crucial, and the Confiscate and Fangs really help with that. So I can, after sideboard, I can play something like a 1-drop, so I can play Greedo, and then if they play the Price on your head, I can play Confiscate and get rid of that immediately. So as you will see later, I faced off against one Boss Green, and that's what I did. So
yeah,
it was very strong. Also, the Jonathan Patrolling Craft was an interesting card. So I'm pretty sure I said something around the lines that I didn't really like the Jonathan last time, and we were running it only as one-off during the Bydgoszcz PQ. But with so many 1-drops, you can exploit them, and it's a really good play, when, especially against Han. So you can bounce something like a DJ or Tech, or any other 3-drops that has some sort of upgrade on it, maybe. So it's a really good addition.
Yeah, okay, so let's go talk about the Warsaw PQ and what matchups we encountered. So it was 7 rounds, it was 100 24 players, if I'm not mistaken, or something on those lines. It was one of the biggest PQs, not only in Poland but like in the world, because 128 is the limit. So you played a lot of meta decks.
Yep. So a lot of hands. So first 2 rounds I faced off against yellow hands, and basically the concepts that I explained a few minutes ago were shown in this matchup. So I was playing 1-drops, 2 1-drops on turn 1, and hands weren't able to really deal with that in any way. Also, the surprise factor was a really helpful thing. So because not many people, not many, basically no one besides Beton knew about this list, so people were kind of surprised by the cards, and it was similar concept to your Starwing Scout. So the guy that you mentioned, that I had to take a look at that card and what does it even do. So I had the similar concept with the muscles and the Guave antagonizers. Like opponents were like, "What is this card even doing?" So yeah, that was funny. I played against Quinlan. Quinlan was a little bit tougher because he was playing Gridos, so the pink decks are harder to play against if you have this my variant of any 1-drops that have 1 HP, but they're still manageable. So against Quinlan, if you have if they run the standard Quinlan, so they have a lot of 2-drops, they most likely don't run that many 1-drops. You can play the 1-drops early, and they can't really ping with Quinlan's ability. So the only basically possibility for them to kill the 1-drops early is by playing another 1-drop. So maybe Grido. Grido was a card that the guy was running, and some Quinlans ran it, and it was definitely annoying, but I was able to win with that. And yeah.
Then we played against each other. So,
yeah, exactly.
And we actually didn't play. We played this matchup before, but we didn't play our exact list versus each other yet, because we thought nobody is going to bring those lists expect from us, so we don't really need to train versus each other. And the matchup were extremely close. You won round 1. You won the game 1 with the Grido. Grido event dealing damage, and I basically missed on last 3 damage to kill you. The second game was extremely close, and I've managed to close it up with the top deck Surprise Strike. And last game I've decided to go in the route of you played 2 1-drops on turn 1, and I decided I will play Tech, because Tech is a unit that a lot of players tend to instantly kill. So I thought, maybe a SIP will just don't go into my base and just waste Tarkin Town to kill it. Because I didn't have a follow up with a second tech. But unfortunately I didn't draw DJ, so SIP correctly didn't go for debate and went face, dealt me enough damage, and I didn't have DJ to close the game, because if I had a DJ, I would just play it. I had the ability to save it if I deployed it, so it was a winning possibility for me. But yeah, Sid basically looked at me. He knew I was bluffing and just went everything face, and I wasn't able to stop it.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things. I'm pretty sure in the third game, when you played tech, I already used Tarkin Town, so I think I played something like Death Star and Daring Great on turn 1 and killed your 3/5.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was turn 2, but I'm pretty sure I had no Tarkin Town, so my only option to kill tech was by attacking with my Death Star and another 2/1 to another Smuggler or something like that, but I kind of tried to imagine how the game's gonna go if I do that, and I was like, no, there's no way that I'll be able to deal enough damage to finish the game if I do that, because I lose a lot of units in that way. So I was like, okay, if you have DJ, it's game over, but I'm pretty sure if you don't, then the game is mine. And so that's what I went with. And basically, that's one of the things that whenever you play that sometimes you can't play around everything. Like sometimes your opponent is gonna surprise top deck and he is gonna win the game out of nowhere.
Yeah, that's how it goes. And yeah, I lost to you, so I knew my like the matchups. Even in the case I would need to like be like the only 5-2. I knew you would be on the top, so I don't really bother with the first loss in the tournament. And your first loss come in the next round.
Yep. So I lost to Jango, one of the guys I knew for quite a while. We actually talked we talked quite a bit before the tournament started. Like we got to the place and we talked with one with another, and he said that he was running. He liked my Bitgosh Django. He made a few additions that I kind of roasted him for in the top 4 because those were the additions I really didn't like, and specifically said quite a few times that I am a huge like I really don't like those changes, but he decided to run them, and then I lost to him in the round 5. So I don't remember who won the game 1, but then the other person won the game 2. And the game 3 was quite close, but unfortunately, I bricked on 5 resource round. I drew Fire Spray and Ruthless Raider, so I couldn't play anything. He played Sneak Attack into Ruthless, and that was basically game over. So I was like, okay, happens. So not much you can do. And also, while I am on the topic of Sneak Attack, why Sneak Attack is no longer in the deck. So this card is great in Django, but because you have so many 1-drops, you are playing so many cards from your hand that it's way harder to play the Sneak Attack into Ruthless, because you need to be able to play on curve, and Sneak Attack plus Ruthless is a combo that comes quite late into the game, so it's really hard to keep the card in your hand. So at first I was running only one Sneak Attack, but then the day before, when I added even more 1-drops, I decided to cut the Sneak.
Yeah, we basically talked a lot. You almost went with one Sneak Attack, because Sneak Attack Ruthless is one of the most powerful plays you can make. But with how you are using your turn 1, turn 2, and turn 3, you just don't have enough cards. And this is actually something that we talked as well. In this, I think this is the only Django list that you, on turn 1, if you see triple Dark Raid, you basically always put it down as a resource.
Yeah, so it's very depending on the matchup. So there are matchups where you can keep it, and there are matchups where you can resource it. But for example, if I play against Honey Yellow, I might be inclined to resource the triple Dark Raid, because if they open with body and I open with 2 1-drops, I am only left with 1 card in my hand. And depending on whether or not I were able to resource some smuggle cards, I might be more willing to resource the triple Dark Raid. I'm pretty sure in the third game against you in the Swiss, I resourced triple Dark Raid game 1 because I tried to play around every single possible 1-drop that it could play. So I wanted to have something against Sabine as well, and that's what I decided to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely resourcing triple Dark Raid is something you should consider, because it's more or less similar concept with for a cause I believe in. That was in set 1, set 2 mentality. So a lot of Sabine players were like, I never can resource for a cause. It's such a good card, but good Sabine players know when to resource these cards and where
exactly.
not to.
Okay, and your last 2 rounds were a little uneventful, even though there were like matchup that wasn't really that easy, but with your sideboard, I don't think Bosk poses that much of a threat now.
Yep. So I played against Bosk Blue in the 6th round, and Bosk Blue is not an easy matchup with the right now, because I decided to take out Palpatines, Bazines, so cards that were really strong against Bosk. But I still felt that matchup is okay. I had a quite decent win rate. Actually, Bosk was out of the matchups that I tested, was the worst one, but it was still an okay one. So I managed to win. I was kind of lucky on the fact that the guy didn't draw Snokes when he really needed them. So I won those games 2-1. And then in round 7, I was facing boss green. So another tough matchup. I lost game 1. So I'm pretty sure I passed round 1 because I didn't have any good way to deal with the bounties if he played them. So I was like, okay, I can skip it. On turn 2, I played Lurker, or maybe it was turn 4, or maybe it was round 3, but I played Lurker. But he had good answers for that. And in late game, I was kind of surprised because he has 3 resources open. I had Fire Spray on the field, Jango that had 3 HP, he had Bosk that had 3 HP also, and it was my action, so I decided to attack with Jango because I was like, okay, on 3 resources, there is no way that he has any sort of like a really good answer to with 3 resources remaining, he has any really good answer to Fire Spray. And then he played Merciless Contest, and I was like, what? And he killed the Fire Spray. This was a very major swing, so I lost game 1. Game 2, I was able to deal with the bounties with the bounty removal, so 2 confiscates, Fang. So I basically removed 3 of his bounties, and that's how I won the game 2. And then game 3 was also interesting because I didn't draw any upgrade removal, so I basically passed first rounds. He also was happy with the passing, so we basically didn't play anything up to 5 resources. But on 5, I was okay. This is the moment when I can start playing. I played it. I think those some shielded units, so he couldn't really kill them with barrage. And then I started to play my late game, so Fire Sprays, Triple Dark Raids, and stuff like that. And I was able to win the game that way.
Yeah, nice. You basically
without upgrade removal, basically.
You basically switched to the like classic Django that is going with Triple Dark Raids and the big ships. Yeah, okay. Yeah. And I've had actually really easy Swiss rounds. Basically, my first 3 rounds were matchups that I'm extremely comfortable in. Palpatine Blue is just too slow. I can deal so much damage from hand that it's really hard for Palpatine to stop it. And also my minions trade extremely well into his. So a lot of decks have a problem with dealing with a 3/5 Sentinel. I have a 3/5 on turn 1 that can equip a blaster on turn 2 and clear the board. And because green and blue doesn't really have any damage from hand, so direct damage, those units will just swing again, and they will need to waste another removal for it. So round 1 was like really quick. Sabine is also the matchup that if Sabine didn't play it, I think it's basically a free win, because you can't play the same way you play versus Han yellow, because I have much more threatening turn 2 and turn 3. For example, if I'm playing versus Sabine and I can play Poe on turn 3, Sabine has a really big decision, because she can either kill Poe with their ECL, but then I will deploy Han and secure the game mostly, or she can let me attack with Poe for like 8, 10 or 11, depends on what buff I will give him, and then she will be forced to deal with Poe, because if I take initiative and I attack with it again, it's basically game over. So I've won all these Sabine games really easily. Round 4, we've talked about it. I've played this SIP, I've lost. Round 5 was another Sabine, so like it's really good to have an easy matchup after you lose, because then you go back into like a mindset of winning. And unfortunately, my last 2 rounds were versus players who decided to also take Han Red. And I've played with my round 6 opponent quite a lot in top cuts and in the other tournaments, and unfortunately, because I've made a lot of changes to handle Han yellow, it also works a lot versus Han red. So they were playing my list that I showed, that they change a little bit for how they want to play. But because I was running Plo Koons in main, I've managed to secure both games in round 6 really, really easily. And in round 7 it was really similar. Plo Koon was just a card that allowed me to win the games. And I've secured a top 8 with a 6-1, the same as Sip. Sip was second after the Swiss, I was fourth. But basically, it was one player with 7-0 and the rest players were 6-1, except from the last player, that was your boss green opponent on round 7. So this is how the top 8 looked like.
Yep. By the way, on the right side, there is Jango facing against Quinlan and my Jango facing against Krennic. So the leader arts were kind of covered, but those are the matchups. So I played against Krennic, a matchup that should be hard in a way because he has barrage, he has blue, all of the blue stuff that heals, so he should be able to counter me. But because it was Krennic and not Kira, which would be way harder, he was running the Krennic's Marine, so to say. So the minion that has a 3/3 in Krennic, but he comes to play wounded, so Jango can counter him easily. So you can use Tarkin Town immediately, and that's a lot of value because if you play Krennic's turn 1 play, you have and I have 2 1-drops. I can do a lot of damage and win the game out of that. And that's what happened. That's what almost happened game 1. So I opened with double 1-drop. He mulliganed and he only had the Royal Guard Attaché as his turn 1 play. I killed it with Tarkin Town. So I had quite good early game, but then in late game he managed to find Snoke. He ramped once or twice. I don't remember exactly, at least once. And for like 3 rounds or so, I wasn't able to find anything that could close the game. He was at like 2 or 3 HP, but I was only able to draw the minions that were immediately dying to Snoke. So not much luck on that end. But in second game and third game, I ended up winning, even though he opened with his better turn 1 place. So he was opening with Pershing, I believe game 2, after mulligan, I didn't fight any turn 1 play. He also mulliganed, but I have initiative, so I passed and was really hoping that he's gonna pass as well because it's very bad if you play aggro, your opponent has a turn 1 play and you don't. But he fortunately also decided to claim. So I played my 3 drops and kinda won the game out of Arm to the Teeth. It on the Jango flip round, it dealt a lot of damage, and he wasn't able to deal with that. And game 3, I also won in the similar matter. I was kind of lucky that he didn't find barrage on 5 resources where that barrage could really save him, but he didn't, and the game was sealed from that point on.
Yeah.
And how was your top 8?
Yeah, and I've played against Avestator, so some people may know him from the TTI. He's also part of our testing group, so we played against each other quite a lot. We played against each other, I think, 3 times already in the Top Cut. And unluckily for him, Anakin is actually quite easy matchup if you manage to find good opening. So because I was higher on the Swiss, I had initiative game 1. I played Sabine unit as a turn 1 play, and Sabine basically can clear every single turn 1 play he can do if I have Blaster. And I've just managed to completely block his deployment, and any unit he played was instantly dying, so I managed to win game 1. Game 2, unfortunately, went the other way around. He managed to block me with 3 villagers, and I didn't have any way to counter them. And on the third game, it went similar to game 2. So he did it. I didn't have like overwhelming advantage on the board, but I've managed to play DJ and Tech. And even though when I played DJ, he instantly killed my Han, so I couldn't destroy his resource because I didn't attack with Han this turn, and normally I wouldn't be able to claim it. So I took initiative, and because DJ was still alive, so I still had that resource, I've just played his own C3PO not to like destroy the resource, so he would not get it back, so he wouldn't have 7 mana to deploy Anakin. And the C3PO not only drew me a few cards during the game, it was also the unit that in the end dealt the final blow. So it was quite funny to basically kill him with his own unit.
Yeah, that's very funny. Also, and now that you mentioned it, you said that you played Avastator quite a lot of times in the Top Cats, and I tried to remember when was the last time I faced him, and to be honest, maybe I'm missing something, but I'm pretty sure I faced him only once in the Top Cat, and it was at the very first tournament that was back in March, like 1 or maybe 2 weeks after the release of the game, where I faced off against his Krennic in the finals. It was a really funny tournament. Like I didn't have any. I was playing Green Boba, but I had no Vader, so that list was definitely the most optimized. But it was definitely a great tournament.
Yeah, that was funny. Okay, and the other top 8s were Jango beat Quinlan, and Han Green beat Bosk Green. So I was facing kinda mirror match, and you were facing the definitely mirror match. And it was also the opponent that beat you in the round 5. And I was playing the Han Green that went undefeated the whole tournament. So let's start with with my game because it's less eventful. Basically, Han Green is the worst matchup for Han Red in the game. Because
You can also move to the next slide, by the way.
Yeah, of course. It's basically the worst matchup for me because I don't really have any answer for ramp. So I don't play body. I only have 1 spark. And if he ramps, he can go deploy Han early. So I will not be able to push damage, and his late game is just better than mine. But game 1, he didn't ramp. I've completely dominated the ground. I've ended the game really, really quickly. So he didn't really get to show any of his late game. But sadly, game 2 and game 3, he opened the same way. He played resupply on turn 1, waylay on turn 2, and deploy Han on turn 3. And because he waylaid, I wasn't able to stop Han. I didn't draw a surprise strike to kill it with my 3/5 or bamboozle or anything. And I know he doesn't really run any 6 drops. So if I stop him, it's basically really good for me. But because I didn't, in both games he just had really big advantage. In both games I've managed to like take back the board in some case, but I was really behind on damage. And then when he played Home 1 is a unit that I will never be able to deal with, so I can't kill it. But I can slow it down, but unfortunately because of the heal, his actions were quicker and he managed to close the game twice after ramping. So I've ended up in the 4th spot.
Yep, and one of the really cool combos with Han Green is the fact that you can deploy him on second round. So if you play resupply round 1 and you destroy Marauder using Han's ability, on turn 2 you can use Han's ability again, so you have 5 resources. you can play Marauder from your hand, and because Marauder's ability says that if you have the same unit on the field as in the graveyard, you can play that card. You can place that card as a resource, so you get 6 resources. You can deploy Han, attack to the opponent base, and that's a major swing that it's very tough to deal with for any deck. So on 3 resources, it's very tough to stop Han, and then next round he can play maybe even more expensive stuff, so U-Wings and Home Ones and stuff like that. So that's a very nasty combo.
If your opponent starts with double ramp as Han, and double ramp that ends up with him having a 4/5 space, 4/6 leader on the board, and you basically play the free drop, it's game over. But he didn't do it to me, he just ramped once in both games, but I know he won a game like that in Swiss. And let's talk about your top 4. You played the mirror again. So how was it different?
Yep. So I faced the same guy as I faced in the Swiss, and those games were surprisingly easier for me. Before that, I can say what I saw in the list that he changed. So before the tournament, as I said, he made a few changes, and I saw in sideboard Cat Bane, and I'm a huge hater of Cat Bane in Jango. We at the Paprika's Open, there's surveys, so to say, where you can say some stuff about Star Wars Unlimited, and there was a question about what is your hot take on Star Wars Unlimited, and I said something like Cat Bane is trash in Jango or something like that. So and during that time, a lot of players were playing Jango in sideboard, so I was really laughing at that change, but. That's what he decided to do. Obviously, it wasn't in any offensive matter. It was just a joking because we know each other, so it was in a friendly matter. And when it comes to games, I played against him, and I had just good cards to match what he did. I think he made like 1, maybe 2 misplays here and there, but there wasn't anything major. And definitely not breaking on 5 resource was helpful this time around, and that's how the games went basically. Both of them quite smoothly.
Yeah, and let's go to the final. And even though I didn't see it, I know the final was uneventful because I don't really see any way how Han Green can win this matchup, especially versus your list. So I basically knew you won before you started playing. But tell us how the games went.
Yep. So we came to the table. I saw his list, and I was like, okay. I mean, it's the things I was expecting from Han. So nothing interesting surprising maybe on that end. So game 1, I decided to pass round 1. So I had, and I don't know exactly what my opening was, but. My thought process was the fact that I had Greedo, Death Star Stormtrooper, Daring Grade, and something else. I don't remember what was it, but I was like, okay, if I manage to, and he passed round 1, so I knew that he doesn't have resupply. He has probably something like Cloud Rider to maybe ambush my stuff, and I was like, okay, I can pass round 1. Did he pass? Okay, sorry for the confusion, but he passed round 1, so I took the initiative, and I was like, okay, if he plays any 3/5, I can do a double 1-drop and Daring Grade into Tarkin Town, and that's gonna be really tough for him to deal with because he wasn't running the modded cohort, so not much really he could do to my 1-drops on his 4 research round. So that's exactly what happened. I played Greedo and Death Star. He played DJ. I killed it. I had something else that I could also do if he decided to ramp or something like that. I had something like Silencer, but but he decided to play DJ, and that basically won me the game. And second game was more or less similar. So I played also just a lot of 1-drops, and he wasn't really able to deal with that. And that's how the finals went. So
Yeah. So
A tough matchup for Han.
yeah, but because you already had a PQ qualifying, your opponent also got it. So it's basically for me the second time I missed on the buy for the Galactic because I lost in the semi-final. But
Yep, that was.
yeah, but so it's you with your two playmats. So what
Yeah,
next?
so two.
Yeah. So what's next for us?
So two champion maps.
Yeah. Okay, so what's next for us? It's let's go to the next slide. Basically, right now, because this is a PQ season still, and we will not really be attending a lot of them. We decided to switch it up a little bit and do some coaching. So if you want to be coached by any of us, you can email the email that is shown. So it's SWU-SwoopRacers@gmail.com. And basically, in the email, just tell us which one of us you want to schedule. What is your what do you want to get from the coaching? Because for us, it doesn't really need to be the same every single time. We can do a deck review. We can do you can play, and we can just tell you what we would do and why. We can play versus each other and test different matchups or adjust your list in various ways, or we can just sit down and talk about the meta and other stuff that may help you in the preparations for the big tournaments.
Yep, especially with the even bigger tournaments coming on the way. Maybe we'll do even more of that later. So yeah, the pricing is gonna be €25 per hour. So if you're interested, DM us, send the email with the informations. So what you want to do during the coaching, when are you available, and also it's important to say that we are both from the Europe. So keep that in mind when it comes to time zones. If you are from US, for example. But yeah, we are eager to help you guys to improve, and yeah.
Yeah. Also, we will be answering every email we get and try to work into the schedule that will work for both of us. So also, if you have any questions, just feel free to post a comment here or just email us at swoopracers@gmail.com. Okay, so thanks everybody, and I hope we will play versus each other in the tournaments or online on Karabast or on other versions. And please feel free to comment below on what decks you're bringing to the next weekend of PQs.